When you grow up, one of the things you learn pretty quickly is that life isn't fair. But another thing you learn that people talk about less is that some people just have an easier life. They just make life look simple. And as you get older, you tend to figure things out for yourself. You tend to make things easier for yourself. However, when you're young especially, you tend to look up to those people that make life look effortless. You study them. What clothes do they wear? How do they carry themselves? How do they become successful? Now, I can't speak to everything here, but the one thing I really do know is fragrance. I've been studying it like crazy close for the last 6 years. That's all I really care about. I know what fragrances work, and I know which ones don't work. There are fragrances out there that I believe will make your life easier. Not a ton easier, just a little easier. They're very high quality. They show that you have taste, and they send a signal that you know what you're doing. Demi Rawling is one of the top female influencers on YouTube. And to this day, I'll never forget one of the first times I saw her. She was meeting up with a guy. He was roughly her age, so early 20s. And she was sizing him up. Now, I can't remember if it was a dating scenario, friendship scenario, or what. And she didn't know what to think until she smelled what he was wearing. And that guy was wearing Prada L'Homme. Why is this important? It's pretty simple. If you're in your early 20s and you're thoughtful enough and know enough about fragrances to not be wearing what everyone else is wearing, it says so many things about you. It says you are discerning. It says you have standards in terms of quality. You think for yourself and you are an individual and you're not wearing industrial fragrances that come off the conveyor belt. And if you know what you're doing when it comes to fragrances, there's a really good chance you know what you're doing when it comes to fashion and when it comes to aesthetics. And to that 24-year-old guy who is discerning enough to wear something like Prada L'Homme, I mean, this is a lot of iris and fresh florals. It's not what everyone else is wearing. It's a clean fragrance. It's not inherently feminine in any way. It has a little bit of sweetness, so it's not like, an old-fashioned scent. Prada L'Homme, I think, works for everybody, but especially for younger men. Unlike Prada L'Homme, which tends to work a little bit better the younger you are, Interlude Black Iris from Amouage is the kind of discerning fragrance that does not come off a conveyor belt. There's a lot of thought put into the fragrance. For instance, it is the very first flanker ever from the house of Amouage. They've been around for 37 years, and they finally came up with something good that they thought was worth turning into a flanker, unlike every other house out there that just pumps them out like nobody's business. But what I love about the creation of this fragrance most is the fact that everything about it was done in artistic terms. For instance, even the name. Loden, the creative director, had just moved to Oman from New York City. He'd bumped into Georgia O'Keeffe's painting, The Black Iris, numerous times. He suggested it as the name, and they went with it. And the perfumer Pierre Nagrand talked about the creation of Black Iris in artistic terms as well. He said he was painting over Interlude Man and taking away some of the citrus notes to allow people to see the iris. I mean, you can't get any more artistic than that. And so you're getting what is fundamentally a Middle Eastern style fragrance that can still appeal to the West. I've tried so many niche fragrances at this point. 150, 200, I'm not sure. Black Iris is definitely in my top 5. It's an artistic piece, and as I said again, not made on a conveyor belt. For fragrance number 3, I'm just going to keep things really simple. This is Bleu de Chanel Eau de Toilette. Now, I understand that the Eau de Parfum is far more popular than the Eau de Toilette. However, the Eau de Parfum has the amber note, which moves it more in a cool weather direction. You can still wear it in warm weather. However, without the amber note, this becomes a better fragrance overall when you're dealing with warm weather scents. And here's the issue. As fragrances have gotten sweeter and sweeter to the point of ridicule, everything now has some degree of sweetness. And so there's so many options for that, but it's getting harder and harder as blue fragrances wane to find something that works really well in warm weather. It's almost exclusively worn in the summer, and if you're looking for something a cut above, a little bit better in warm weather, Bleu de Chanel is the way to go. The thing I find funniest about Bleu de Chanel, it is a woody aromatic. Like functionally, technically, in every way, it's a woody aromatic, and yet a woody aromatic started the blue fragrance craze. This isn't even considered to be a woody citrus. There's only 2 citrus notes here, and there are no sea notes or marine notes or anything like that. So how does that start the blue fragrance craze? It just boils down to one thing: an overabundance of ISO-E Super. Now, ISO-E Super, in most cases, comes across as cedar-like. It's a woody scent. But if you use it in extreme high amounts, it's going to come across as very, very fresh. So this has a light, airy, fresh quality that gives it its blue fragrance, fresh appeal, even though everything else about it is quite woody. I mean, there's a lot of other woody notes in it. Now, there is a little bit of freshness. Aside from the ISO-E Super, you're going to get ginger. It's somewhat fresh, mint, and then you're going to get 2 citrus notes, grapefruit and lemon. But fundamentally, it's still a woody aromatic. Fragrance number 4 is Givenchy Gentleman EDP, and this fragrance is consequential for a number of different reasons. I think the most important is the house of Givenchy really hadn't done all that well. It had the Givenchy Gentleman released in 1974, but a lot of the releases since then had been mediocre. Nothing had really broken through, and even the very first fragrance in this line, it was an iris fragrance with fruit. It was the original in 2017. It was a bomb. But this fragrance came out, and it really put Givenchy on the map, and they've followed it up with some excellent fragrances ever since. And so it turned the line into something really relevant. But the key here, I think, was Givenchy. They were afraid of the sweetness. You'll notice the first fragrance was fruity, but it didn't have the same amount of sweetness. It's very difficult to put iris, which is a sophisticated note, up against something sweet, which is not sophisticated. It's hard to get the balance right. I think the perfumer in this case, Olivier Cresp, he created the very first modern gourmand 35 years ago with Angel by Mugler. He was perfectly suited to thread the needle between sophistication and modernity with the sweet element. He did a phenomenal job, and he was the gourmand expert. For instance, the vanilla note here is not a typical vanilla note. It is black vanilla husk, so it's got a powdery quality, not the same density as a standard vanilla. And then he surrounded it with other sweet notes, things like tonka and benzoin. More importantly, tolu balsam, which has a mild amount of sweetness, got a little bit of spiciness, like a cinnamon vibe to it as well. But that all tones down the heavy sweetness of vanilla. So even though there's a vanilla note here, and it is sweeter than some of the other options like Prada L'Homme and Jour Homme Intense, which is good for younger audiences, but it doesn't override the sophisticated powdery iris element. It just as I said, it threads the needle for sophistication. Fragrance number 5 is Dunhill Icon, and this may seem like a really strange choice because this was considered to be one of the best cheapies of all time. And why would I have a cheapie on this list? It's very simple. It boils down to one thing. The use of neroli is spectacular here. Neroli is it's a floral note with a little bit of citrus to it. So it's got a soapy feel. It's got the density of soap, but the freshness of soap as well. But it's the use around the neroli that makes this special, because it's a fundamentally neroli fragrance. And I'm not sure where the sweetness comes from. I'm going to speculate that there's a lot of ambroxan that's unlisted here that gives off a little bit of sweetness, combines with the neroli, and makes just a fascinating combination of that neroli freshness along with the dull sweetness of ambroxan that makes it really work. I put this on yesterday for the first time in months, and I could not believe how long-lasting it was. It really lasts a long time. Projection's not bad, but it is a long-lasting scent. I'm talking 7 or 8 hours, and I wouldn't have said that had I not tested it yesterday. I'd forgotten. Fragrance number 6 is Tom Ford's Beau de Jour. This fragrance is often compared to Zeno by Davidoff, but after wearing this 2 days ago in really warm weather, I will never compare it to Zeno again. Zeno has a funky note that doesn't have here, but this is just so much stronger. And for a barbershop, barbershops don't necessarily lend themselves to being strong. I must have picked this up over the course of 4 or 5 hours. Now, admittedly, it was a hot day. I must have picked it up a half dozen to a dozen times, like quite a bit. I really noticed it on me. I really enjoy the fragrance, and this is going to be a summer staple for me going forward. And again, as I mentioned earlier in the video, it can be difficult to find classy fragrances in the summer. So yes, fundamentally a barbershop. It leans green. There's some green aromatic notes here, but there's a lot of lavender, a lot of oak moss. And I think the most important thing is the longevity without blowing people away with heavy projection. So a light barbershop that works. I've talked so far about the difficulty in finding something classy, sophisticated, and high quality to wear in the summer. But the winter is a different story. There's a lot of options for sweet fragrances that provide, that comforting feel, the comforting sweetness that you get. That does work. But to find something that's not sweet that still manages to work in the winter, that's a tough call too. Jeffrey Bean Gray Flannel, I discovered that recently. I'd been hearing about that for a long time from people. I thought that worked really well in that kind of thing. But so does this fragrance. This is Loden from Jacques Fath. Now, Jacques Fath is an unknown or very under the radar French house. It goes back to the 50s. Jacques Fath, I believe, worked for Christian Dior. So the the house has a real heritage to it. And yet people, I got this for $15 at a discounter. It's a 50 milliliter. It's a parfum concentration. That's crazy. But what I like about the scent, though, is it works really well in the winter without being sweet. So this has a ton of vetiver. I think the key is in the name, Loden. Loden is a green felted wool. It's got a prickly feel to it. It's water resistant. You wear it in alpine regions in Europe. So it's a classic, thick winter coat that's going to keep you warm. And really that's what the fragrance does in its own way. There's three different vetiver notes: Haitian vetiver, bourbon vetiver, and Indonesian vetiver. They're all layered together, and then you're going to get a lot of aromatic notes, especially juniper you pick up quite a bit of here. And it gives a warm, woody feel, and it lasts a really long time, as you would expect from parfum, from a niche house. It's long-lasting scent. We're talking 8 to 10 hours. It's a gentlemanly too. You're dealing with woods here, and specifically vetiver, which is a clean note. It's a very clean but somewhat aromatic, maybe a little touch of green. I mean, the bottle is green, and the Loden, the jacket itself is also green. So there are green facets, but it's a great option in the winter for something sophisticated and different. Probably the hardest thing to find is a good quality fragrance at a really inexpensive price. I think an excellent option is Eau de Beau from L'Occitane Provence. This is a fragrance that came out in 2006, but was way ahead of its time. In 2018, 2019, this really had a moment. It got very, very popular, and on Fragrantica's year-end list, this was like top 60, top 70 fragrances of all time. In 2019, the two fragrances around this were Boss Bottled and Reflection Man. So, I mean, that's how high it was in terms of what, people were talking about it. There've been a ton of fragrances released since then. And so this one has kind of subsided in its popularity, but this is really excellent fragrance. And the odd thing about it is, even though it came out in 2006, it's got an amber woody type of scent that really fits the modern aesthetic. It is long lasting. I think the only problem is it is slightly synthetic. That is noticeable, but given the price, it's well worth it. So anyway, discernment and thoughtfulness is key to making life look effortless. If you put a little bit of effort into what you are doing, you will come across as being more effortless. Now, again, I'm not saying that I do this in other aspects of my life other than fragrance, but fragrance is what I've chosen to really get, nerdy about. And I do know a lot about it. And a lot of these fragrances are really thoughtfully made and really do work, are under the radar for one reason or another and need to be taken seriously. And normally I will have one or two passengers on the list. I did not put a single passenger on this list. All of these fragrances are, I stand behind firmly. I think they're very, very good for whatever reason. I mean, yes, Eau de Beau is a $50 fragrance, but for a $50 fragrance, in terms of originality and quality, it's excellent. And Le Loden, it's under the radar, but It's an exceptional winter fragrance, and same thing with pretty much everything I mentioned on this. There are no passengers today. Anyway, thanks for watching.